Have you ever felt like you need to change everything about your life all at once to make progress? Well, what if I told you that's completely wrong? What if just one single, small habit could set off a chain reaction and transform your whole life? It sounds almost too good to be true, right? Can one little tweak, one strategic change really start a positive domino effect without you having to overhaul your entire world? To see how, let's dive into a real-world story that shows this principle in a pretty spectacular way. So, our story kicks off way back in 1987. We're talking about Alcoa, one of the biggest aluminum companies in America. And let me tell you, it was in deep, deep trouble. So they bring in a new CEO, and his very first move, well, it left everyone completely speechless. That new CEO was a guy named Paul O'Neill. And at his very first big meeting with all the Wall Street investors, he didn't get up and talk about profits or synergy or restructuring. Nope, he talked about one thing and one thing only. I mean, just look at the disconnect here. On one side, you have Alcoa, a company that was literally hemorrhaging money, battling angry unions with terrible productivity in what was a really dangerous workplace. And on the other side, you have O'Neill's singular focus. It wasn't about the money, it was about worker safety. His goal? Zero injuries. Wall Street basically freaked out. Investors dumped their stock, convinced this guy was some kind of hippie who had no idea what he was doing. They totally missed the genius of what was about to happen. So O'Neill put in this really simple, but totally non-negotiable habit. The trigger, or the cue, was any employee injury. The routine? The president of that unit had to report it directly to O'Neill, the CEO, within 24 hours. And that report had to include a plan for making sure it never ever happened again. And the reward? Well, it was crystal clear. You play by the new rules, you get promoted. You don't, and you're out. Simple as that. And this is where the magic starts. This is the ripple effect. Because to report injuries that fast, managers had to talk to workers all the time. The old stiff corporate hierarchy just started to melt away. And to prevent accidents in the first place, they had to understand the manufacturing process inside and out, which, surprise, surprise, made productivity just soar. Suddenly, the unions and the managers were on the same team, fighting a common enemy, unsafe conditions. And for the first time ever, any worker felt empowered to shut down the entire production line if they saw a safety problem, something that would have been unthinkable just months before. And here's the punchline. O'Neill never actually promised Wall Street he'd make them more money. But as safety got better, costs just plummeted. Fewer accidents meant less downtime, less wasted material, and better maintained equipment. All of a sudden, by focusing on the people, Alcoa became more efficient and more profitable than it had ever been. So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It wasn't magic. It was all about using a really powerful psychological principle, one that you can absolutely use in your own life. What O'Neill basically tapped into at Alcoa is what author Charles Duhigg famously called a Keystone Habit. This was the real secret to the company's incredible turnaround. So what in the world is a Keystone Habit? Well, like it says here, it's that one special habit that starts a chain reaction of other good stuff. You can think of it like the lead domino. It's not always the biggest or the hardest one to push over, but it's the one that, once it tips, it knocks over a whole line of other good behaviors without you even trying. The name itself is just a perfect analogy. You know, in architecture, a keystone is that wedge-shaped stone right at the top of an arch. It's the last piece that goes in, and it's the one that locks all the other stones into place, giving the whole structure its strength. You pull out the keystone, the whole arch falls apart. A keystone habit does the opposite. It pulls everything together and makes the whole structure of your life stronger. But how? How does one little habit create so much momentum? Well, the secret is a really cool psychological trick our brains play on us. The power of small wins. See, Keystone habits work because they give us a taste of victory. Every time you do the habit, your brain gets a little hit of, hey, I did it. That little success, that small win, starts to build a new belief. It creates a culture, even if it's just inside your own head, that tells you that change is actually possible. And that makes it so much easier to tackle the next thing. And this is where that domino effect really takes off. That feeling of success from one small win just spills over. It makes the next positive change feel less intimidating, more doable. Before you know it, change starts to feel, well, almost contagious. Let's take a classic example, regular exercise. Study after study shows that exercise is one of the most powerful keystone habits out there. When people start a regular exercise routine, other things in their lives just start to fall into place, almost unconsciously. They naturally start eating better. They report being more productive at work. They feel less stressed.
The habit of exercise isn't just about burning calories. It reshapes how you see yourself. It proves to you that you can stick with something, and that belief spills over into everything else.
Okay, so the Alcoa story is amazing, but it's a giant corporation. How do we take this idea and actually apply it to our own lives? Well, let's look at a couple of surprisingly powerful keystone habits you could start maybe even tomorrow. Let's start with something that sounds almost ridiculously simple. Making your bed every morning. I know, it sounds trivial, but for a ton of people, this is an absolute game changer. Here's the deal with why it works so well. It is a perfect, tiny little habit loop. The cue, you get out of bed. The routine, you take 60 seconds to make it, and the reward is immediate. You turn around and see a little bit of order and accomplishment. It's your first small win of the day, and that sets a positive tone. Research actually shows it's correlated with better productivity and can kickstart other good behaviors, like, not leaving your clothes all over the floor. It's that tiny domino that starts tipping over bigger ones.
Okay, here's another one that research shows has a huge impact. It's simply the act of writing down what you eat every day.
Now, this isn't about dieting or feeling guilty. It's all about one thing: awareness. The habit is just writing stuff down after you eat, and the reward is insight. This simple act of tracking makes you conscious of patterns you were totally blind to before, and that awareness, all by itself, often leads to making healthier choices. But more than that, it builds a deeper habit of self-reflection that can bleed over into decisions way outside of what's on your plate.
So we've seen how powerful these habits can be, for a massive company and for us as individuals. Which brings us to the big, important question: how do you find your own? And the answer, really, just comes down to a little bit of self-reflection. It's not about finding the hardest thing to change. It's about finding the most strategic thing for you.
Okay, here's a really simple framework you can use. First, just think about your best days. The days you felt on top of your game, productive, happy. What did you do on those days that you didn't do on the others? Second, look for the things that gave you that little jolt of a small win, that feeling of accomplishment. And third, maybe consider journaling. As we saw, it's a powerful tool. It forces you to pay attention, and when you pay attention, you start to see the patterns that will point you directly to your own keystone habits.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. This isn't about changing your entire life overnight. It's about finding that one powerful lever. So, what's the one small change that for you could start your domino effect?